And this is something that I do throughout the year to let you know some of the things that are going on up here in Washington, and then most importantly, to hear your questions. And so throughout the call, we're going to be doing a few things. One, I'm going to be taking questions from you. So as the operator said, press 0 on your phone if you want to get in the queue to ask a question. But I'm also going to be asking you some poll questions. And so we're going to do 3 different poll questions tonight. And about once every 15 minutes, I will give you the result of the question we're doing and then ask the next question and then give you the result of that one. And we'll move throughout those as we're doing questions from you here. And so right now we are in DC. We have votes tonight. We are working on what's called the National Defense Authorization Act. This is the bill that determines the priorities for funding our nation's military, which is one of our most important duties as a Congress. You know, if you look at our constitutional requirements for Congress, funding our national defense is one of the top priorities we have. And making sure our defense is focused on the right things is something that we're really spending a lot of time on this whole week. And in fact, I just came off the House floor voting on some amendments. We're going to be voting on amendments throughout the night until about midnight tonight, and then finishing that bill up tomorrow. So we're doing that this week. Any questions you will have, don't hesitate to ask. Let me also give you a little bit of information for my offices. If you want to reach out and call any of my offices about issues you're specifically having, whether it's getting a passport processed, or if you're a senior and you're having trouble with your Social Security, or a military veteran who served our country, reach out to our offices. You can go to the website at scalise.house.gov. That's scalise.house.gov. And on that website, we've got all the information for our district offices, Metairie, St. Tammany, Houma, Tangipahoa. We've also got the DC office numbers. You can sign up for our newsletter. We have a newsletter that we send out a few times a month to give you updates on things going on up here. And if you want to just email us a question, you can do all of that through the website. Our main office in Metairie is 504-837-1259. Before we go to our first caller, let me read you the first poll question that I'm going to ask you. Like I said, we'll go about 10-15 minutes on each of these questions. I'll give you the results in real time, and then we'll go to the next one. The Supreme Court just made a ruling that deals with whether or not the president has the ability to waive student loans. And it was a pretty major decision that came out a couple of weeks ago. Louisiana was actually involved in that lawsuit through the Attorney General's office. But my question is, you know, the Supreme Court recently ruled that President Biden's student loan program, cancellation program, is unconstitutional. Question is, do you think that it is fair that you and other taxpayers should have to pay the bill for someone else's student loan? So press 1 on your telephone if you think that it's fair that you or somebody else should have to pay the bill for somebody else's student loan, because if the student loans are waived, somebody else is paying for it. This isn't just money that falls out of the sky. Press 2 on your telephone if you do not think it's fair that you would have to pay for somebody else's student loan. Press 2 on your phone if you don't think it's fair, that policy. So with that, why don't we go, operator, to our first caller.
Our first caller tonight is David from Harahan. David, you are now live with Congressman Scalise. Please ask your question.
David, are you there? Hey,
Yeah,
David, thanks for participating. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah,
What's your question?
thank you for your time here. I was just wondering, you know, is Congress able to do anything to help insurance companies alleviate some of this, you know, like our flood insurance, it's almost tripled. If there's anything Congress can do to help these companies maybe come together and, I don't know, take a percentage of the risk or something together instead of just one company holding so many policies, to do something to kind of help with how high insurance has gone up now.
Yeah, David, flood insurance is a major problem. And really over the last year, we've seen this get dramatically worse because FEMA runs the National Flood Insurance Program. And about a year and a half ago, they rolled out this program called Risk Rating 2.0. And I'm sure y'all have heard a lot about it. I've surely been fighting it a lot up here in Washington because as soon as we heard that FEMA was getting ready to make major changes to the flood insurance program, we were very skeptical. And so we started asking questions of FEMA, and the biggest questions were, how are you changing people's risk? And if you're going to increase people's policies, what are you basing it on? And the most alarming thing that is still a real major concern today is FEMA won't give us the answers. Look, FEMA is a federal agency that's funded by your tax dollars and mine. And for a federal agency to say, we're going to raise people's rates, in your case, David, you said it tripled. I've heard stories like that and worse throughout Southeast Louisiana. And the fact that the agency that's doing this is not a private company, this isn't Allstate or State Farm, it's the National Flood Insurance Program through FEMA. And they won't even tell you what methodology they're using when we've made a lot of improvements to our flood protection in Southeast Louisiana. And I'm talking billions of dollars. I fought hard, as so many others had, to get some of the funding for our flood protection. And I've seen those projects that have increased flood protection throughout so many parts of our state. And then to see them come in and act as if that flood protection didn't even happen, and they raised these rates dramatically. So I've not only been asking questions, but I've been working with a coalition of Republicans and Democrats in Congress to try to fix this. And so we're in the process of trying to get improvements to the National Flood Insurance Program. And this is a program that comes up for renewal every year. September 30th is when the program expires. Right now I'm trying to get some changes to that program. We've been asking some basic questions of FEMA in the meantime. And unbelievably, FEMA has been reluctant to even give us basic questions about how they came up with these increases that they're hitting families with, not just in Louisiana, but all across the country. So I'm going to keep fighting against what FEMA did with the flood insurance program. We've got to get this addressed, and I'm not going to stop working till we do. Thank you, David. I appreciate your question. Operator, we'll go to the next question.
Our next question will be from Sonia from River Ridge. Sonia, you are now live with Congressman Scalise. Please ask your question.
Good afternoon, Congressman. I actually have two questions. My first one is how is it that y'all allow the border to be open like that? Anybody with two eyes can see that the border is wide open. And how is it that y'all are allowing such a small minority in the LGBTQ community to make it seem like women don't exist?
Well, two important questions. One, why is the border open? I will tell you, this is a major, major national security problem. But President Biden, the day he took office, had a secure border. I'd worked with President Trump. We funded the wall. We were actually building hundreds of miles of wall. We had agreements with Mexico. The Remain in Mexico policy was working to, set up a system if somebody wanted to seek asylum in America. They had to stay in another country, and if they came through their other country, they couldn't come into America to seek asylum. They had to remain in Mexico. President Biden, the day he took office, very first day, he immediately halted construction of the wall. He signed an executive order to say no more building of the wall. Then he also got rid of the Remain in Mexico protocol. And he did a few other things through executive order that sent a signal across the world. It's not just in Mexico or South and Central America, but he literally said the border's open. And you're seeing it. I mean, millions and millions of people have come in the last 2 years to this country illegally. We have been fighting and screaming about this problem. I went down to the border. I actually embedded with our Border Patrol agents and asked to spend time with them. And they took me through their shift change. And, you go out around midnight or 1 in the morning on the Rio Grande in Texas, and that's when you see some of the largest numbers of people coming across illegally. And the president is allowing it to happen. So we worked on a bill that when we got in the majority, we passed a bill. It's called the Securing the Border Act. H.R. 2 is the number of the bill. And I worked real hard as the majority leader to get that bill put together and passed. It passed the House a few months ago. And unfortunately, President Biden came out and said he's against it. And this would actually secure our border again. And look, this is an issue we're going to keep fighting over. But the bottom line is, the president does have a lot of discretion. And this President Biden, has chosen to open up our border. It's a crazy problem that's bringing drugs into our country. We're losing 150 young people a day dying from fentanyl, drug overdoses, because the drug cartels in Mexico now have control of our southern border, and President Biden allowed it to happen. So I want to reverse it, but I think it's going to take a change of president, because this president's made it clear he doesn't care that the border's open. He opened it. He could close it tomorrow through executive order, and he won't. Regarding all this other stuff about what is a woman, I mean, this isn't a complicated issue for most Americans. How you're born, you're born a man or a woman. We passed a bill just a few months ago in the House that said men can't play in women's sports. And so think about this, Sonia. The idea of men playing in women's sports wasn't even something that we even had a conversation about 20 years ago. And yet today you're seeing it happen. You're seeing some people rightfully speak out against it. I'm disappointed that there's some people who should be speaking out against it who are silent, because it undermines women's sports. We've had some high-profile athletes come up here to Capitol Hill. Riley Gaines is one of them. There's been many others who have seen their opportunities taken away because a man comes in and starts participating in women's sports, and they're allowed to do it. It needs to change. Our bill passed on a party line vote. I voted for it. There were a lot of people that voted against it, but it passed, and it's over in the Senate. I'd urge everybody to call their senators and encourage that bill to get moved through the process. Appreciate your question. Let me read the poll question one more time, and then I'll give you the results shortly, and we'll go to the next question. It deals with the recent Supreme Court ruling that said President Biden cannot waive student loans. And so my question to you is, do you think that it's fair that you and other taxpayers should have to pay the bill for somebody else's student loan? Press 1 on your phone if you think that's fair. Press 2 on your phone if you don't think it's fair. Operator, why don't we go to the next call?
Our next caller will be Brandon from Mandeville. Brandon, you are now live with Congressman Scalise. Please ask your question.
Hey, Brandon, how are you?
Congressman. I'm doing fine, sir. What is currently being done about the higher interest rates right now? Is there a way? Are we trying to work at getting them the interest down?
Yeah, and Brandon, the reason that you have higher interest rates right now is really driven by inflation and the higher spending in Washington. We have been pushing to bring spending down in Washington. I want to get a balanced budget amendment, and we're going to be bringing a balanced budget constitutional amendment to the floor. It would take a 2/3 vote, unfortunately, and I think everybody ought to have to take a position on that, by the way, because every other state in America has a balanced budget amendment like we do in Louisiana. Why Washington doesn't, we're going to have that debate, but because Washington is spending trillions more than it takes in, that increases inflation, and once inflation starts going up, interest rates start following right behind it. And so if you lower inflation, you will lower interest rates, and we need to do both. And it starts by controlling spending in Washington. And so we're having a lot of big battles over that right now, and there are many of us working to reduce the level of spending in Washington. The president is actively fighting against us, but we're going to continue to push, because that's the only way you're going to lower interest rates in America. Brandon, I appreciate your question. Why don't I give you the results of our first poll question? And so 16% of you said that you think it's fair that you and other taxpayers should have to pay for someone else's student loans. 84% of you said it is not fair, meaning 84% of you are against the idea of waiving student loans payments. So appreciate you participating in that first poll question. Press 0 on your phone if you want to go to the queue to be able to ask a question. Let me, before I go to our next caller, read our second poll question. Again, we're going to have 3 poll questions. Second one deals with Ukraine funding. Been a lot of debate about, how much we should be supporting Ukraine in their fight against Russia. We don't have any men or women risking their lives there, but clearly billions of dollars have gone to Ukraine. So my question to you is this: would you support the United States sending additional funding to Ukraine in their fight against Russia if there were stronger accountability and transparency measures put in place? So press 1 on your phone if you would support additional funding going to Ukraine under those conditions. Press 2 on your phone if you would be against that additional funding. Operator, why don't we go to our next question?
Our next question will be from Kathleen from Ponchatoula. Kathleen, you are live with Congressman Scalise. Please ask your question.
Hey, Kathleen, how are you? Kathleen, you on the line? Hello, Kathleen. We may have to come back to Kathleen. So, operator, can we go to the next question while we see if we can get Kathleen back? Yeah, operator,
Our
can
next
we?
question. Yep. Our next question will be from Anita from Raceland.
Anita, are you on the line?
Hi, I'm here.
Hey, how are you? Appreciate you participating.
Good. Thank you for having this. My question kind of goes back to the male athletes competing against female biological males. Why is it considered doping if people are taking testosterone, but it's not if they're taking some kind of a drug to make them have female traits? And if they're not taking the drug due to a doping clause, then they're actually a biological male. And this should not even be an issue. That it's ridiculous. And if they're not actual transsexual, they're still having the male parts, which Riley Gaines said in one of her things to Congress. It's ridiculous that they are a man saying, "Oh, I'm a woman with long hair. I can compete." I mean, I don't get that. Why are the drugs not an issue?
Yeah, and look, Anita, you make great points, and those were some of the arguments used in the debate when we said that men shouldn't be allowed to play in women's sports, and we had a vote on it. The bill passed the House. There were a lot of no votes on that bill, but I was proud to support the bill, and I think you're going to continue to see this issue debated because it's becoming more prevalent, and I think a lot more people are asking the questions you're asking. So appreciate you asking that question, Anita. Let me give you the results of the second poll question. 54% of you are opposed to sending more funding for Ukraine, regardless of the accountability measures. 46% of you said you would support additional funding for Ukraine if there were additional accountability measures put in place. And so, again, this is Congressman Steve Scalise. We're going to go to our final poll question. We can take a couple more questions before we wrap up. But this final poll question deals with work requirements. And I know I hear from a lot of people back home, especially our small businesses who are struggling finding workers, looking for workers, and yet the federal government is paying people a lot of money and welfare benefits not to work. And so the question is, given the current state of our economy and our spending problems in Washington, do you support placing basic work requirements on able-bodied adults as a condition to get taxpayer-funded welfare benefits? Meaning if somebody is on hard times, we all believe in a safety net, but if they are getting any kind of taxpayer-funded benefits, should they at least have to look for work along the way to get those benefits? Press 1 if you think there should be basic work requirements for people to get benefits, and press 2 on your telephone if you don't think they should have to be looking for work to get basic work welfare requirements. With that, operator, why don't we go to our next call?
Josh from Homa, you are now live with Congressman Steve Scalise. Please ask your question.
Hey, Mr. Steve, this is Josh.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, pretty good, man. Look, let me tell you, you're a hero for us down here in Homer Terrebonne area. We love you.
Well, appreciate you. Appreciate you a lot. Thank you.
Hey, we do have a question. It hits us in the pocketbooks. Since Hurricane Ida, and I'm speaking for a lot of people, not just in my neighborhood, but in our whole community. We have total losses on our houses, right? So we had total rebuild. I'm talking from the studs on up, new roofs, new insulations, new air conditioning units, new windows, everything. But our energy bills are double and sometimes triple what they were pre the storm. Now I get, natural gas costs a little bit high. It costs a little bit more, but wouldn't you think if our house is 100% more, maybe even 1,000% more energy efficient, wouldn't the prices come down at least a little bit or even stay level?
Well, and Josh, obviously, I went down and toured the devastation down in Homa and all of Terrebonne and Lafourche, right where Ida touched ground, did tremendous damage. And a lot of people are rebuilding. A lot of people are still in that process, and we're still working with them. But yeah, if you've done the repairs to your house and, even better repairs and more insulation than you had before to see your bills go up, obviously the funding and the billing of utility companies is regulated at the state level through the Public Service Commissioner. I know we've seen increases across the country in general in electricity rates, and some of that is because of the anti-energy policies we've seen coming out of the administration, and we've been fighting against that. Some of that's led to 20 to 30% increases in household electricity. But in terms of what's happening at the state level, I know that deals with Public Service Commission regulations and policy. So we reach out to our office if there's something we can look into with you and try to help you with, because it sounds like you shouldn't be seeing those increases, but obviously we'd have to find out more, and my office would be happy to help you. And for anybody, if there's anything my office can do to help you, go to our website, scalise.house.gov, and you can find all of our contact information for our offices. Our main Metairie office is 504-837-1259. Through the website, you can also send us emails, sign up for our newsletters, anything we can do to help you. If you're a constituent that has any kind of problem with a federal agency, don't hesitate to reach out and call. Let me give you the final results of our third and final poll question. 91% of you said yes, people should have to at least be working or looking for work in order to get welfare benefits, and 9% of you said that they shouldn't have to work or look for work to get welfare benefits. So with that, if the operator wasn't able to get to your question, don't worry. We have your name and your number, and my staff will be getting back to you. It is an honor to represent you in Congress. I truly appreciate the opportunity to come up here to Washington and fight for Southeast Louisiana. And again, anything I can do for you and help you with something that you're dealing with back home, don't hesitate to reach out through our offices, through the website. We'll be happy to help you. God bless you all. Have a great evening.
Please press 1 to leave voicemail. Please press 1 to leave voicemail. Please press 1 to leave voicemail.